Could you please help this new channel by liking and subscribing? As you see, most of you listening are not subscribing. It will really help the channel grow. Thank you so much. I still get chills when I think back to my creepy encounter with Brad from Tinder. We matched online, and at first he seemed totally normal. His Tinder profile said he was 28, worked as a financial analyst, and liked hiking and watching sports on weekends. His pictures showed a decent-looking guy with short brown hair, blue eyes, and a friendly smile. He looked like someone I could see myself dating. When we started messaging on the app, Brad came across as nice and respectful. We chatted about our favorite TV shows, places we've traveled, and other typical getting-to-know-you stuff. After a couple weeks of messaging, he asked me out on a real date to get dinner downtown. I was excited to finally meet him in person, so I quickly agreed. We made plans to meet at a trendy Thai restaurant on Saturday evening. That Saturday, I spent way too much time getting ready, changing my outfit a million times. I finally settled on a blue dress and small heels. I even did my hair and makeup nicer than usual since I wanted to make a good first impression. I got to the restaurant 10 minutes early and let the hostess know I was waiting for someone. She led me to a small table by the front window. Sitting there sipping water, I started feeling really nervous for some reason. First date jitters, I guessed. I tried distracting myself by looking around the restaurant. It had modern decor with brick walls, dim lighting, and colorful artwork. Seemed like a hip spot for a first meetup. A few minutes later, I saw a guy walk in wearing jeans and a button-down shirt that matched the man in Brad's pictures. He came over with a confident grin and gave me a hug. So far, so good. We sat down across from each other and started browsing the menu. The waiter came by and we ordered pad thai and curry dishes along with wine. As we waited for the food, we began making small talk. Brad asked me about my job, life in the city, family back home, normal first date stuff. I started to relax and enjoy the conversation. Brad was articulate, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about me. But as the date went on, I noticed some peculiar things about him. For one, he kept steering the conversation back to questions about where I live. He asked if I had roommates, what my apartment building was like, even what floor I lived on. It seemed oddly specific. Another weird thing was Brad kept glancing around the restaurant with a tense expression, like he was closely observing all the other patrons. He'd also seemed fidgety, constantly playing with his napkin or tapping his foot under the table. When our food came, I was relieved to finally eat and avoid more stilted small talk. But Brad kept up with the invasive questions between bites. Do you live alone? What's your roommate like? Does she stay there often? I gave vague responses, growing increasingly uncomfortable. Brad was becoming less and less like the charming guy I had messaged online. I noticed him looking intently at my phone sitting on the table next to me. Then when I went to the restroom, I came back to find my phone had shifted position slightly. It gave me the creeps. As we finished up dinner, I became determined to end the date early. But every time I mentioned leaving, Brad kept insisting we order more drinks or dessert. He seemed to be stalling for time, clinging to keep me there with him. Finally, I blurted out, I really have to get going, my cat needs to be fed. A total lie, but it worked. Brad looked disappointed but agreed to get the check. When the waiter came by, Brad hurried to grab it first. I invited you out, so please let me pay, he said with a tight smile. I reluctantly acquiesced. This guy was already creeping me out, so I didn't need to argue about money. I just wanted the date to end. After what felt like forever, we finally left the restaurant and stepped outside. Want me to walk you home? Brad asked eagerly. No, that's okay. I'm just going to call an Uber, I replied, backing away slowly. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, saying, come on, it's not that far, is it? I wrested my arm from his grasp and took off running toward the parking lot. Don't contact me again, I yelled over my shoulder. I jumped in the first cab I saw, my heart pounding. I watched out the rear window to make sure Brad wasn't following me. Finally arriving back at my apartment, I did an extra lap checking all the rooms just to be safe. My roommate Jenny could tell I was freaked out and asked what happened. I told her all about the creepy date with Brad. We decided to be extra diligent about locking doors and windows, just in case he tried anything weird. I also blocked his number in my phone. Over the next couple weeks, I kept noticing Brad lurking around places I went regularly, like my gym, grocery store, and coffee shop. A few times I spotted him sitting in a car parked outside my apartment building. It was terrifying that he was stalking me now. One day I came out of work to find Brad waiting by the entrance doors. Before I could turn around, he said, "Hey there, I was hoping to run into you." He tried following me into the lobby, but security guards stopped him. I decided I had to get legal help, so I filed a police report about Brad stalking me. The cops said there wasn't much they could do yet, but at least I had documentation in case things escalated. Jenny and I ended up moving out of our apartment and into a new place across town. I slept with pepper spray next to my bed from then on. After we moved, I finally started feeling safe again and tried to put that experience behind me. But I'll never forget my disturbing encounter with Brad from Tinder. It taught me that you really don't know anything about a person just from their online profile. I definitely trust my instincts more on first dates now. Staying safe has to come first, no matter how charming a guy may initially seem. Creeps can hide in plain sight. I learned that lesson the hard way. At least now I feel prepared if I ever get bad vibes from an online date again. Her name was Stacy, and we had been chatting for a couple weeks. She seemed really cool. We liked the same obscure indie bands, had the same favorite cult classic movies, and could send each other memes all day long. I felt like we really clicked online. Stacy was cute in her photos too. Petite, with long wavy brown hair, big green eyes, and freckles across her nose. She said she was shy in person at first, but once she opened up she could talk for hours. I told her I understood about being nervous to meet strangers from the internet. I suggested we meet up in a public place like the wine bar downtown so she'd feel safe. After a couple more days of chatting, she finally agreed to meet on Friday night. I was really excited for the date as I got ready that evening. I took extra time picking out a navy button-down shirt that I thought looked good with my eyes. I added a spritz of cologne and made sure to neatly style my hair. I even scrubbed the tires of my car to make it look extra clean. I wanted everything to be perfect. On the drive to the wine bar, I started feeling some butterflies in my stomach. I hoped in person we had the same witty banter and connection that flowed so naturally over text. When I got to the bar around 7:30, I didn't see Stacy yet, so I got us a little high-top table in the back corner. I ordered a glass of red wine and checked the tile on my phone. She was 10 minutes late and hadn't texted, but I figured she was just nervous like she warned me she might be. I sipped my wine and people watched to pass the time, glancing at the door each time it opened. After 20 minutes and no word from her, I started to feel a little anxious. I texted her, "Hey Stacy, I'm here at the table in the back whenever you get here. No rush." I kept rereading our conversation to see if I had the time or place wrong, but no, we had definitely planned to meet here at 7:30. The wine bar started filling up with large groups, and I felt self-conscious sitting alone at my little table. By 8:15 and still no sign of Stacy, I knew I must have been stood up. I felt like such an idiot. I moped over my wine, feeling dejected. That's when the bartender came over looking concerned. "Everything all right over here?" he asked kindly. I confessed to him about my failed blind date. He frowned and leaned in like he had a secret to tell me. He said earlier a young woman had come in asking if I was here yet. When he pointed me out at the table, the woman left immediately without even saying hi. I unlocked my phone and showed him Stacy's Tinder profile pic, asking if that was her. He confirmed it was the same girl. Now I was really confused. Why would Stacy come all the way to the bar just to see me, but then not even come say hello? I threw some cash on the table for my wine and hurried out of the bar, feeling very uneasy about this whole situation. As soon as I stepped outside, I started looking over my shoulder anxiously. The street was oddly deserted and eerily quiet. I power walked to my car, and that's when I noticed something stuck under the windshield wiper. My breath caught in my throat when I saw it was a photo of myself, printed off my Tinder profile. On the back, someone had crudely pasted letters cut out from magazines that said, "I see you." My heart started pounding. Who was this girl, really? Why was she stalking me like this? I whipped my head around, but the street was empty. Hands shaking, I jumped into my car and locked the doors. I drove home well above the speed limit, constantly checking my rearview mirror. When I got back to my apartment, I turned on every single light and checked in closets and under beds like I was in a horror movie. Once I made sure all the doors and windows were locked up tight, I finally started to relax slightly. I poured a stiff drink and collapsed onto the couch, mind racing over what had just happened. I barely slept at all that night, tossing and turning with the lights on. My brain was going over every single message I'd exchanged with Stacy, looking for clues or red flags I must have missed. Who was behind that profile, really? How long had they been stalking me for? Did they know where I lived? What did they want from me? In the cold light of day, things seemed a little less terrifying. I told a couple close friends what had happened, and they agreed it was super creepy and disturbing. We reported the Tinder profile as fake, but it had already been deleted. I never saw or heard from that mystery person again. But I deleted all my dating apps after that night. I still get anxious just grabbing drinks with someone I met online. That bizarre experience really left its mark on me. I still get chills remembering the feeling of seeing my own photo stuck to my car, knowing someone had been following me. Part of me worries what might have happened if I hadn't left the bar when I did. But mostly I'm just glad I trusted my instincts and got out of there quickly. I learned the hard way that you really can't trust everyone online, even if they seem totally normal. I'm just glad I escaped that night without any real harm done. But I'm much more cautious now about meeting strangers from the internet. You really never know who is behind that smiling dating profile photo. I've been on Tinder for a while, swiping through countless profiles, but nothing ever really clicked. That is, until I matched with this guy named Alex. His profile seemed pretty standard. A few nice, artfully shot photos, a bio that was just the right mix of intriguing and mysterious. We started chatting and he seemed cool, a little quirky but in an endearing way. We had some good back and forth, found out we had a few hobbies and interests in common. I figured why not see where this goes? So I suggested we grab drinks sometime. We decided to meet up at a cozy little craft beer bar downtown that I liked. It was dimly lit with exposed brick walls and plush leather couches. The kind of place that was perfect for a first date, intimate, but not too formal. When Alex showed up, he looked just like his photos. Tall, with dark curly hair and piercing green eyes. He was dressed casually in a flannel shirt and jeans, but he carried himself with a certain confidence. As soon as he walked in the door and spotted me, a smile spread across his face. He made his way over to the table where I was sitting, weaving through the sparse Friday night crowd. "Hey, you made it," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I was worried you might have changed your mind." "Not a chance," I replied, smiling back at him. "I've been looking forward to this all week." We ordered a couple of beers and dove right into conversation. Alex was easy to talk to, making me laugh a lot with his quirky sense of humor and clever little anecdotes. I found myself really enjoying his company. As the night went on, we got a little more personal, opening up about our lives, our families, our hopes and dreams for the future. I started to think maybe this could actually turn into something. Then, out of nowhere, Alex's demeanor completely changed. He leaned in close, a serious look on his face, and said, "Listen, I need to tell you something. I'm kind of a wanted man." I stared at him, not quite sure I'd heard him right. "What do you mean, a wanted man?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He glanced around the bar nervously before continuing. I got mixed up in some bad stuff. Long story short, there's a warrant out for my arrest and I need to lay low for a while. I was hoping maybe you could help me out. Let me crash at your place for a bit. I felt my heart start to race. This had to be some kind of sick joke, right? There was no way this guy was actually a fugitive. But the look of desperation on his face told me he was dead serious. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. I can't hide a wanted criminal in my apartment. Are you insane? I kept my voice low, not wanting to draw any unwanted attention. Alex's expression darkened. Look, I don't have anywhere else to go. You've got to help me out here. This is a life or death situation. Ugh. That's not my problem. I hissed. I'm not getting involved in any of your criminal nonsense. Find somewhere else to hide out. He leaned in even closer, his eyes narrowed to slits. If you don't help me, I'm gonna have to take matters into my own hands. You don't want to know what I'm capable of. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was he actually threatening me? Are you serious right now? Are you threatening me? Hey, I don't want any trouble. I just need a place to crash for a little while, that's all. You help me out, and everything will be fine. If not, he let the threat hang in the air, his gaze boring into mine. I shook my head in disbelief. Forget it, Alex. There's no way I'm hiding you from the police. You need to turn yourself in and deal with the consequences of your actions. With that, I started to gather my things, ready to get as far away from this lunatic as possible. But before I could leave, Alex's hand shot out and grabbed my arm in a vice-like grip. You don't understand. If I turn myself in, they'll throw me in prison for the rest of my life. I can't let that happen. You're the only one who can help me. I tried to pull my arm away, but his grip was too strong. Let go of me. I'm not helping you, end of story. Now get your hand off me before I call the cops. He tightened his hold, his eyes wild with desperation. I'm sorry, but you don't have a choice. You're coming with me, whether you like it or not. Panic started to set in as I realized this guy was completely serious. He was going to force me to help him, no matter what. I glanced around the bar, hoping someone would notice what was going on and come to my aid, but the place was dimly lit and mostly empty. We were alone. Alex, please let me go. I won't tell anyone, I swear. Just let me leave and we can forget this ever happened. My voice was shaking, betraying my fear. But he just shook his head, that terrifying look still in his eyes. I can't take that risk. You're coming with me, end of discussion. I felt myself start to hyperventilate. This couldn't be happening. How did I end up in this nightmare scenario? I had to get out of here, had to get away from this lunatic before things got even worse. Summoning every ounce of courage I had, I opened my mouth to scream for help. But before I could, Alex's hand clamped down over it, muffling the sound. I frantically shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. This couldn't be real. It just couldn't. But the crushing grip on my arm and the wild, desperate look in Alex's eyes told me that it was. I was in serious trouble, and I had no idea what was going to happen next. As he began to drag me towards the exit, I knew I had to think fast. I couldn't let this maniac take me wherever he was planning on taking me. I had to find a way to get away to get help. But with him holding me so tightly, I didn't know if I'd be able to. All I knew was that I had to try. My life might depend on it. I still can't believe how that Tinder date went so horribly wrong. When John and I first matched on the app, he seemed totally normal. His profile said he was looking for a real relationship, not just a casual hookup. We started chatting and really hit it off right away. He was easy to talk to over text. After a couple weeks of daily messaging, he suggested meeting up for dinner and I happily accepted. I was optimistic it could lead to something more serious. The date started out well. We met at a trendy new restaurant downtown that I'd been wanting to try. John looked just like his photos, tall and handsome with warm brown eyes and a friendly smile. The hostess sat us at a quiet table for two with candlelight, creating a romantic ambience. I did find myself wondering if assuming this was a romantic date was premature, but tried to push those thoughts aside since the conversation flowed so easily. Over appetizers and entrees, John asked thoughtful questions about my graphic design job, my college years, and my family. I got the sense he was really trying to get to know the real me. In turn, he told me about his recent promotion at the accounting firm, his longtime dream of starting his own business someday, and funny stories of his traveling adventures. I was pleasantly surprised when he picked up the check without making a big deal of it or acting like he expected anything in return. This guy seemed like the total package. Things started to go downhill on the drive back to my place. Out of nowhere, John started complimenting my looks, going on about how nice and hot I was. At first I laughed it off, but he kept making more and more comments about my body. An uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach as we pulled up to my small house. I thanked John for dinner and said a polite goodnight, fully expecting him to head home. But instead he turned off the ignition and stated he'd walk me to the door. Alarm bells started blaring in my head. I hesitated but ultimately mumbled "okay" to avoid seeming rude. As we approached my front steps, I fumbled to find the right key while silently praying he'd just go. At the front door under the dim porch light, I firmly stated "well, good night" and went to unlock the deadbolt. But suddenly John was right behind me, grabbing my wrist and trying to pull me toward him for a kiss. I told him point blank that I don't kiss on first dates and tried to gently remove his hand, but his grip only tightened. He moved closer, going on about how I'd been leading him on all night and must want physical contact too based on our connection. I stated clearly that I was not at all interested in anything intimate happening and he needed to leave immediately. But John refused to release my wrist, saying I should invite him in to see where things lead. My heart raced in my chest as I tried unsuccessfully to wiggle out of his hold. The more I protested and pulled away, the more aggressive and threatening he became. He tried to push forward and maneuver his way through the front door, but I managed to firmly plant my body in the doorway to block him. Terrified as his unwanted advances escalated, I started frantically screaming at John to stop and leave me alone. In desperation, I twisted my arm roughly, finally breaking his tight grasp. Free from him at last, I scrambled inside and slammed the door closed in his face. My hand shook as I deadbolted it and slid the chain lock into place. John started pounding on the door, muffled yells coming through as he demanded I open up and let him in. With trembling fingers, I grabbed my phone and called 911. The dispatcher calmly instructed me to stay locked inside and said police were on their way. Within minutes, I heard sirens approaching while John continued making a scene outside. Soon there was a loud bang that made me jump. I realized later it was the cops pulling him away from my door. I peered through the curtains and saw 2 officers putting John in handcuffs next to their flashing patrol car. A wave of relief washed over me knowing he was no longer a threat. The police came to the door and I let them in to take my statement about what happened. They commended me for standing my ground and refusing to allow John inside where things could have escalated. I couldn't hold back tears as the panic wore off. After the police left and it was just me alone again, I double-checked every lock and sat up wide awake all night, too fearful to sleep. Every minor house noise or car driving by made me jump. I kept replaying those terrifying moments with John at the front door, wondering how I could have so badly misjudged him as safe during our weeks of friendly online chats. The next morning, exhausted and still shaken up, I contacted Tinder support to report John's profile. They removed it swiftly, though he surely just created a new one. I immediately deleted my account. Online dating is far too risky. It's been a few weeks now, but I still feel anxious and on edge, especially coming home in the evening. I find myself compulsively checking that the door is locked, with both the deadbolt and chain fastened. Part of me feels stupid for not picking up on red flags with John earlier, but my close friends keep assuring me it's not my fault at all. I know the only thing I can really do is take this as a warning and stay vigilant about protecting myself out there. I'm just thankful I stood my ground and managed to get away before things escalated any further. But after that terrifying experience, I think I'll stick to meeting men the old-fashioned way from now on, not through apps filled with strangers. That Tinder date was way too close of a call for me. Thank you all for listening in. If you haven't already, then please like and subscribe and help this new channel grow. It's free and means a lot.